And in case you look around this office today, somebody around here is having a birthday soon, apparently.
Somebody is having a birthday.
Somebody who likes wrestling, apparently.
And this person went to great expense to get you autographed pictures, autographed
from the
posters.
dollar store.
Well, I wasn't going to say that part of it. It's the dollar store, though, in Miami, Florida, maybe.
So my 41st birthday's on Monday. I hate birthdays. I walked in, I saw Judy standing here with one of our co-workers, Megan, and they have that, cat just threw up in your shoe and you haven't figured it out yet sort of look. And I'm like, well, of course, why is Judy here on a Friday morning in my office?
Right.
So my first question is, what the hell are you doing here? And then all of a sudden I looked around and realized, oh, there's a cake on my desk.
I love a good birthday.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I think it's once a year, right? You get to...
I don't like birthdays. I don't like Christmases. I don't like being happy. How about that? Happiness sucks.
Okay, happiness sucks. That's not a good model for Friday. We'll have to come up with
That's why I got married, so I can be,
miserable
for the rest of my life.
Well, we'll come up with something better. By 5 to 12, we'll change the conversation.
Good friend Brian Goldfinger. I don't have your intro again.
It's okay.
Goldfinger. He's a man. Hi, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Talking about birthdays, I'm celebrating a birthday too on Friday, and I love birthdays. They're a lot of fun. I met my wife on my birthday. Yeah. So birthdays are fun times.
So here's how this all sort of plays out now. I mean, again, I never was a big birthday guy. I don't like being the center of attention. It's just not my thing. So this is weird. And again, I appreciate the work that went into getting these wrestling posters and the happy birthday sign and everything around the studio. It looks really nice.
I love it.
But my daughter, her birthday's on Tuesday. Oh, wow. So we're looking back at our Facebook memory. She'll be turning 4 and starting JK next week. So how this all sort of worked out was my daughter was supposed to be born 3 days ago.
Okay.
4 years ago. So the due date was August 28th. The day of my birthday, that day, my wife got induced, and then the next day my daughter was born. So everything is kind of overshadowed by the fact that my daughter's birthday is the next day.
Right.
I'm cool with that. I'm good like that. Put the focus on her. It's all good. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I hate Christmas too. So I'm just not a happy guy.
I do like these two posters, though. This reminds me of like when you were a kid and you used to get those WWF magazines.
Oh, yeah, I used to get them all. I was telling somebody about that because Jordan and I went to go see WWE live on Monday.
Yeah. Was that Bobby Roode?
Yeah, Bobby Roode was here. Yeah, fantastic show. It's too bad I had to leave early because of a fake tornado warning. Thanks for that. But we were talking about it on the way there where I was saying at Christmas time, I can remember every year Christmas in my stocking, I got the wrestling magazine even if I already had it, or I knew not to buy it that month because it was going to be in my stocking. But I also remember a couple of years going back that they would buy the wrestling magazine, roll it up, and then when you open it up, there'd be 2 tickets when the WWF was going to be at the Oshawa Civic Auditorium. So I always remember getting those tickets. And of course, these were all hard tickets back in the day, back in the late 80s, going to see the wrestling at the Civic Auditorium in Oshawa when I was a kid. And of course, it wasn't like now where they announce it a month and a half ago, they're coming to Peterborough, and they're like, okay, they're coming in a month and a half. Back then, the show wasn't going to be until like March. So I'm sitting on these tickets for like 2 months, and I'm like, eagerly waiting because I want to go see wrestling live in Oshawa. And it's a whole big thing. It's amazing how you get older and you don't get quite as excited for certain things, but this is nice. I'll take it.
Would they televise those events?
No.
Not like today. Like this one at the Mem Center, though. Did they?
No.
They uploaded on like Facebook.
The dark show, yeah. So you have like house shows, dark shows. Wrestling, a lot of people knock it, but it's really, really, it's important. And I see it's a big part of you. Yeah. And it's a big part of me and my family. But there are these dark shows, house shows. So you have the live televised event like the Raw and the SmackDown and then the pay-per-views. And then you have the traveling road shows like Bobby Roode. He's not often on television. Yeah. But he'll be doing these house shows or dark shows. And you get a lot of good stuff from those shows. But back on the importance of wrestling, when a lot of people are new to Canada and they come to Canada not understanding English, it's a one common thread one sport that's always on TV.
Worldwide.
That people get worldwide. There's a good guy. There's a bad guy. The person who wins has his or her arm lifted up in the air, and you get it. It's not as complicated as, say, NFL football. It's not as complicated as baseball. It brings people together, and that's what I find beautiful about wrestling. When my grandfather came to this country, that was one of the sports that he gravitated to because he understood it. And for all the people out there who might knock wrestling for its show, and I get that, but at the end of the day, that common theme brings people together.
It really is. And you start to realize more and more how worldwide this wrestling phenomenon is, because as you mentioned, a lot of people come here, they may know that we like hockey in Canada, but they may not understand it. Hell, when I first watched lacrosse, I didn't really understand at the get-go. There's still some things I don't understand. No, you're absolutely right. And it's one of those things that, no matter where you come from, that wrestling, you may not be a big fan, but it exists.
Yep.
It exists. You're a smart man there, Mr. Goldfinger. Do you understand cricket, by the way, speaking of sports?
Kinda.
Kinda?
Cricket matches can be very long. There's different types of matches. You have test matches that last over a few days, and then you have different matches that can just be a day or so, or amount of, I think there are runs or ins or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you have a ball, think of a ground rule double, which is worth, I think, 4, and then you have a 6, which is like a home run.
Yeah.
I kind of get it.
I've tried.
I know why they wear white in cricket.
Why is that?
I'm going to tell you, because a good South African friend of mine told me, when you're playing a long test match over the course of a day or a number of days in the hot, hot sun, do you really want to be wearing a dark color, or do you want to be wearing white? And the answer is you want to wear white. And that's why often they wear white in cricket.
But I thought you couldn't wear white after Labor Day.
It doesn't matter if you're playing cricket.
Brian Goldfinger, of course, Goldfinger Personal Injury Law, a good friend of the show as well. Glad to have you back just as we head in towards a long weekend. What do you got going on this weekend? What's your plans?
For this long weekend?
Yeah.
Kind of just taking it easy before the kids go back to school. I don't really want to overstimulate them with too much programming and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think, this weekend are going to be rushing up to their cottages and maybe closing their cottages or whatnot. And I always offer a few tips on my blog online in terms of safety tips over the long weekend, because very often we receive a spike in calls after the Labor Day long weekend of bad decision making, bad behavior, etc. after the long weekend, and you can kind of imagine what it is.
Yeah, well, we'll get into more of that. Of course, the long weekend festivities are almost underway for a lot of people. You dealt with a bit of an issue on the 401 coming in just around the Pickering area, but one thing you managed to avoid yesterday, and I'm sure everybody's been talking about it and knows exactly what happened yesterday, was at Yorkdale Mall in Toronto with the shooting, and you were actually almost planning on going to the mall.
We definitely had plans to go to the mall to do a bit of back-to-school shopping, and just by fluke, my wife checked Twitter, and it said closing at Yorkdale, shut down, so we didn't end up going. So it's scary. What's most scary is that I think we've become so desensitized to these shootings. We had the shooting at the Home Depot in Peterborough not too long ago. You had a mall shootings just seem like they're commonplace nowadays, and I feel bad that we've become so desensitized to it. It is a big deal. Just I don't know. We're acting like it's not a big deal, and I don't know what can be done to avoid these sort of things.
It's funny because I was watching CP24 yesterday, of course, glued to it during all the coverage to try and find out what was going on, and they were actually interviewing a lady that's a reporter from the States, from Texas,
right?
And she says, in the States, we're so used to this. Coming to Canada, I would never expect something like this to happen in a mall like this. Yeah. And as you mentioned, Mark, obviously it wasn't, and I think you said as well, Brian, is that, we're not dealing with, anything more than probably just a couple of punks.
Yeah.
More than likely. The investigators will figure that out, of course, who's responsible for it. But it's not, it just seems like this couple kids that just want to cause problems.
No kidding. And thankfully, nobody's hurt with these sorts of situations if it is something like that.
Especially in a mall like that. Like, I've been spending a lot of time at Yorkdale because, I go to the Apple store. That's basically the amount of time I spend at the, Yorkdale. But if you go there on a regular basis, especially right now, that's the busiest time of the year for this mall outside of Christmas.
And that's not a joke. Like, that's not funny. I don't understand if somebody would do it for that sort of, the pleasure of watching thousands and thousands of people run. But health concerns, you have seniors in there, you have, families with small kids in there, and the
I heard a
panic
kid
and-
got knocked over. Something like a toddler got like belted,
Sure.
like knocked
Sure.
over.
You're going to get trampled when you have thousands of people that are running for their lives. It's insane, and I hope they catch the person responsible. But I don't understand. I don't understand firearms. I don't understand why you're going to carry them in the mall. I don't understand why that's even necessary or even a thing. But
I don't understand how these guys in their 20s get the guns in the first place.
Well-
That's I think the bigger issue here.
Yeah.
And that's got to come to an end. That's the really upsetting thing, is how these guys get the guns in the first place.
It's funny too, because again, you talked about the situation here in Peterborough. It was obviously isolated, and a lot of these things usually are. But as you mentioned, especially in a big city like Toronto, how do you know whether it's a isolated incident or if it's a gang issue or if it's a terrorist issue? There's really no defining logic as to what it's all about or why it's happening.
you know what I didn't like about the Home Depot thing, aside from obvious what happened? They didn't even close the store.
Oh, they
Like,
didn't?
talk about being desensitized as a consumer or as a person. They didn't close the door. They didn't close the business out of simple respect for the situation. That's shameful. That honestly, Home Depot is a sponsor of the show. I apologize because, like I said, I'm only going to be here till noon. And I'm likely never been invited back.
And if you get sued, Brian's right here. He'll give
Yeah,
you
that's
a
right.
card.
Personal injury. But couldn't you just have locked the doors for the day and said, in respect to the situation, we're closed?
Yeah, it's hard to say who makes those sort of determinations too, right?
I really don't know who makes those decisions.
And I completely respect the people that, obviously the people who work here in Peterborough, the managers, assistant managers, the decision makers on that. I mean, they probably take their lead corporately, from somebody else. So there would have been a dialogue, I'm sure, between them and who knows, even corporate head office in Atlanta type thing. But jeepers, that's, that I don't know if that was reported or wasn't, but I know for a solemn fact that
I know
store
that
remained open.
The parking lot was shut down, so not too many people were going in to buy a bunch of 2x4s. It was foot traffic only. So if you're going to carry those across the other side of the Lansdowne, God bless you, because you're a lot stronger than I am. Brian Goldfinger, personal injury lawyer, is in studio as well. So what are some of the things we want to talk about? Obviously, we're going into the long weekend. Traffic's going to be heavy. We talked to Carrie Schmidt. They're doing their distracted driving campaign this weekend. You mentioned cottages and trailers being shut down, and some people are going to be winterizing them already. So there's lots to get into.
I'll share some funny stories with you long weekend that are not driving related, because the obvious, don't drink and drive. Don't boat and drive. Don't be distracted while driving. Don't, be stoned and drive. That's, I think, another thing. So I think those are the obvious things. Here are some less obvious things of people up at the cottage, and I'll share with you some funny stories. It seems like every year after the long weekend, I get a call from a Superman cottager, and it always tends to be a man, not a woman, who's overexerting himself in terms of the physical duties at the cottage, i.e. Moving a boat, moving a pontoon, moving a big rock or a big branch.
Lifting the deck.
Right.
Yeah.
Random things like, I'm going to do this, I'm able to do this, and good on you for thinking you could do it, but then you pull out your back. And the next thing you know, you can't go into work. And that back pull isn't so funny after you can't go into work for a few weeks. And then you have to file a claim for long-term disability or short-term disability with a company like Great West Life, Manulife, Standard Life, or Sun Life. So you file the claim and you think everything's going to be okay. You feel like a real big idiot because you pulled out your back at the cottage. But then it's not a laughing matter because the back pain doesn't go away and you have to make a claim through insurance and the claim doesn't get approved. Right? And then we're there helping these people fight for these claims that don't get approved. Now, whether or not they're justified because the disability is such that it prevents you from working is up to debate. Okay. But just having to go through the claims process is really hard and frankly very embarrassing, because when you tell the doctor, Doc, my back hurts, and the doctor asks you, well, how'd you throw out your back? And you tell them, well, I was trying to move this thing at the cottage. It happens. It's very real.
Wow.
So I'm just heads up to all of you cottagers out there. Please don't overexert yourself moving things. Don't be a Superman. Get some help moving things. And if it's not a job fit for two people manually and you got to call in somebody with their bobcat to move it, by all means, do that.
Do you find the same thing happens in the wintertime when we get a heavy snowfall?
Wintertime, with the back issues, that's clearing the snow. But wintertime, actually, you see some severe things of people who are out of shape, having heart attacks, and that's a kind of a different story. In wintertime, you see, of course, a lot of slip and falls, but in the summertime, kind of the things that are just that make you go are things like I hurt my back or I hurt myself trying to fix up my cottage, and it's frustrating for a lot of people, and even more frustrating sometimes is dealing with the insurance company as well.
Or I was hammered and I tripped over the campfire.
That's a different story. That happens too. I've heard some really bad stories about a bit too many beverages and people falling down and bumping their head on rocks or falling down, steep hills or cliffs. It can get nasty, and the question is, who do you sue when you've had a few too many drinks and you're on your own property? Well, you can't sue yourself. If you're on somebody else's property and they don't have other proper, fences or gates in place, that's a different story. But at the end of the day, only you can blame you for having your 12th beer in a couple hours and then doing something silly like that.
And that's got to be a really gray area, Brian. Like if you were renting a cottage for the weekend,
right,
and you do have that sort of scenario where you're down at the campfire and there's 8 or 10 of yous and somebody trips over, falls, fractures their skull.
Yeah.
And they figure, well, maybe the rock shouldn't have been there, or you should have had proper seating around the campfire.
Right.
Something like that. That's got to be very...
It's not easy. It can be argued. Those fact patterns certainly arise for people renting cottages over a few weeks. I suppose the advantage of renting is you can sue the owner of the cottage. If you take the example of you've invited your friends to the cottage and you own the cottage and one of your guests had a few too many drinks and then fell down and hit their head, that's certainly a gray area, yeah.
And is it from the landlord's standpoint, a lot of
the
times...
the owner,
at that point. That's got to be difficult, too. And you're trying to protect... You want the people, obviously, to come and enjoy themselves. They're paying customers and that sort of thing. But from a liability standpoint, from the owner, like how could the owner protect themselves in that sort of situation?
Well, the easiest way and the best way for any owners out there is make sure you have property insurance. Mm-hmm. That way it's not your problem anymore. You can just say, I got a claim from Goldfinger, he's suing me, I don't have to deal with that anymore, my insurance company will.
Right.
And if that happens, the insurance company will handle the claim for you. They will hire a lawyer for you, and if the claim goes to trial or if the claim settles, they'll pay out on any judgment or award down the future. If you don't have property insurance and you own the property outright, you got a problem, because then you have to pay for your own lawyer or represent yourself, and then you're dealing with the legal system. It's not fun, it's not pretty, and it can get very expensive. And also you're putting your property at risk in the sense that if you lose a trial and the judge awards the plaintiff, say, $100,000, and you don't have $100,000 liquid, a lawyer like me could put a lien on your property, whatever property you have, or garnish your wages, or do some nasty
I'm glad
things.
We're friends, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you have insurance, right?
Brian Goldfinger, personal injury law, goldfingerlaw.com. Interesting, we're talking about intoxication or people being intoxicated, because there was a story that came out just recently about, this is more around sexual assaults, and how courts are allowing the use of intoxication as a defense.
Yeah.
But when it comes to personal injury law, how much of a defense can that possibly be when you're talking about personal injury?
No, okay, the defenses in criminal law are very different than the defenses in civil law. So this burden of proof in criminal law is beyond a reasonable doubt. Think of that as 99.999% certain. In civil, it's just 50% plus 1. It's a balance of probabilities. So the burden is not as high. That defense of, also in criminal law, you need the actus, mens rea and actus. And my criminal law is off because I'm not a criminal lawyer. You need the act and the mental intent of doing it.
Right.
And they're saying, well, you're so intoxicated, you don't have that mental intent to commit the crime. Civil is totally different. You don't have those two burdens of proof. You can just pursue it. But that's a totally different area, and it's such a hot topic. I really don't want to touch the recent ruling from the Supreme Court on that issue. It's just terrible, because in those cases, the victim is being essentially victimized twice.
Right.
In the sense that he or she goes on the stand and he or she has to prove their case and relive it over and over and over again, and it's not fair. It really isn't.
But I guess what I'm asking is there the possibility that it could spill over into civil as well, where you're going to walk into more situations like, well, I can't be at fault because I was drunk, and because the criminal side says it's okay, this one should be okay here too.
I've never seen a judge do that, but you also have to keep in mind for these assault cases, there's no insurance for a criminal act. You can't take out a policy on somebody being a disgusting human being and going around sexually assaulting somebody.
Correct.
So it just, in those instances, you sue. And you hope that the person has money there. And a problem with a lot of these sexual assault cases is sometimes the perpetrator has no assets. So you can get a judgment for $1 million, but that judgment is only worth a piece of paper. You can never enforce it. If the person doesn't own any land, any valuable works of art, so to say, doesn't have 2 dimes to rub together, you can get your judgment. You can, but you're never going to be able to enforce it. That's the problem with a lot of these sexual assault cases.
Brian Goldfinger from Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. So again, long weekend, a lot of traffic, distracted driving. We mentioned it off the top. That's what the LPP will be putting a lot of focus on this weekend. Still a number of deaths and injury as a result of distracted driving. In fact, I've got the stats right here from the LPP.
Stats, okay.
So 5,619 crashes so far this year as a result of inattentive driving. 31 people have died. 1,051 people left with injuries as a result of distracted driving. How many distracted driving claims would you say that you maybe see in a year?
A lot. I can't count, but it's a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. It's good for business, but it's terrible for everyday people. And people just have to appreciate your email. It's not like your email is going to self-destruct in 2 seconds if you don't read it.
It's not Inspector Gadget.
Right, right. The phones are addictive. Smartphones are made to be addictive. Programs like apps like Facebook and Twitter, they're made to be addictive. All those notifications you get on your phone, whether it's a vibrate or a beep or your phone lighting up, it's like a video game. It's made to distract your attention from other tasks. And unfortunately, when your task is getting you and your loved ones from point A to point B, that's your main responsibility, and people don't appreciate driving a vehicle is a privilege. It is not a right, and you are driving a potentially lethal machine. You got to put down the phone. What can I say?
It's the perfect idea. Like it's the perfect medium to understand that it's unnecessary, but it's the number one thing to think that it'll never happen to me. I'm just going to respond to this text quick, 3-4 seconds. It's only going to take me, and it is, and so many of us are guilty of it on an hour by hour type basis. And it 5,600 people. You can imagine we didn't have this 15 years ago. And I don't know how you stop it. I mean, I guess the only real way to stop it is to have the vehicle manufacturers put a kill on it in some way where you can't use the phone, or you can only use it for phone calls only or something.
Potentially, yes. One of the tips I have for our listeners is there are a lot of hands-free apps out there that'll read you your messages or send automatic replies if you get an email or a text saying busy, I'm driving.
Yeah.
And you can just look them up on the App Store or on Google Play, whatever it is. That's what I would recommend to people, or you just turn the phone off.
If somebody has not been charged with inattentive driving or distracted driving by the police, because again, that's not an easy one to look into as a police officer, because do they have the right to be able to go, all right, let me see your phone. I want to see what last time you logged into it.
They can, but they often don't, and then they often won't pull the records after the fact. A lawyer like me would to find out, but that all happens after the fact, and I'm not able to press charges. I'm not the Crown.
Right. So how does your role work as a personal injury lawyer? I've been involved in an accident. I believe that Mark was driving distracted, but I can't prove it.
It's very simple. At something called an examination for discovery, we can ask the defendant, were you using or operating your cell phone or mobile device between this hour and this hour? And then the person under oath has to answer truthfully. He or she may be truthful and say, yes, I was. And then I'd ask for the records. Even if they say, well, I don't think I was. Well, if you're not sure, I want the records, and I make a request for those records, and then I can eventually pull them, provided everything goes well.
I have a question there, and that was because I don't want to pay out on Graham's claim, right? Because I mowed him down, and it was an accident.
Yeah.
I hit him with my car.
Right.
But let's say that I was at the stoplight, and I have my screen is set for 2 minutes of inactivity, then it shuts off.
Yeah.
Okay? So the green light comes on, I start driving. A minute 40 seconds later, Graham pops out in front of my car while I looked at my screen is still on. I looked at it, but not actively. I'm just seeing if I got a notification via text on the home screen. Boom, I hit Graham. The phone is set for a 2-minute home screen where it's inactive. Can you tell? There's no way you could tell that, or maybe you could. I simply looked down at the icon the way I am now to see, I've got a text message. I didn't open it. Screen's still set to inactive. Boom, Graham comes out in front.
Yeah, but the fact that you're looking at your screen while driving.
But unable to prove that I was looking at it. But the screen was on.
That's right. Well, the thing is, I'd be able to access your records to find out that you got a text in that sort of time frame, and then it'd be up to a jury of 6 people to decide whether or not that's reasonable for you to have looked at or probable. I'd say on a balance of probabilities, you likely looked at it.
Right.
If I'm able to frame my argument in a certain way, 50% plus 1, I think you might have looked at it.
It's interesting, too, because we talked about cameras last time you were here.
Yeah.
As security cameras, that they're not reliable.
No.
And they usually cannot be used as evidence against... They can be submitted.
They can be used, but if the footage, if it's not caught on camera, then it's not caught on camera.
But it's interesting where I was talking to, and we'll chat with Peter Sedrup from the local police department coming up because, again, we're talking about back to school. That's
right.
Another one, too, that I want to get to very quickly here, where you're known to basically, if I'm right-handed and I've got my phone, and of course I'm staring at my crotch because that's what a lot of people do now when they're driving is they stare at their crotches, not their phones. But if you got your phone in your right hand, you're bound to have the car swerve a bit. Not swerve completely, but sort of glide to the right a little bit. If you got in your left hand, same idea. You're going to glide a bit.
You should talk to the officer when he comes in about having your phone in hand, even if it's not being used.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure
that's illegal
that's
too.
Distracted
But that's
driving.
what he's saying. Like, but he was saying that that's how they can start to get an idea of whether you've got your phone in your hand or not, or
because there's a visible swerve. Sure.
Yeah, a bit of a swerve. Yeah. So is that something that you could pull up from a camera from somewhere and go, well, you can start to see that the car is moving
on a dash cam? Yeah, potentially with. More and more people are getting these dash cams, and you can see that. And on a balance of probability, I think a jury would go in that direction. Yes.
Back to school. We sort of alluded to the last time you were here, but obviously now it's crunch time. Tuesday's getting underway. We talked a lot about university and post-secondary students, making sure they've got those renters insurance when they move into dorms or apartments or whatever it happens to be. School buses will be back out in full force come Tuesday. A lot more traffic's going to be out there. There's going to be a lot more kids that are going to be excited. Maybe they're not so excited about going back to school. So what do we need to know about Tuesday when we go back to school?
Slow down. It's going to be a busy traffic day regardless of where you live. There's going to be a lot of new vehicles on the road and a lot of new vehicles kind of not quite knowing where to stop or where to go. Everyone's going to be in a hurry to get back to work, right, after a nice long summer and a long weekend. Slow down. Make sure you know where you're going and be cautious of your surroundings. A lot of kids will be on foot or on bike or on a scooter. Just be mindful of that. We
have a lot of kids that we had a young kid actually in East City last year get struck by a vehicle, and they've since now dropped the speed limit down to 40 from 50 in that area around where that school is. Obviously, being mindful of those speed limits. But what do we want motorists to know about when they're approaching these school buses? Even if the school bus has started to drive away, but yet Johnny is still standing on the side of the road and hasn't crossed over yet because he's doing something else.
Nobody's perfect. Johnny might be late for the school bus. Have some common sense and slow down in your community. At the end of the day, it's your community. These are your neighbors. These are not people you want to hurt in any way, shape, or form. So just be mindful of that, and be particularly mindful in the month of September when everything is kind of new and fresh and kind of busy and bustling.
It must be hard as a lawyer when you have a parent come to you because Johnny just got hit by a car or something along those lines, or something happens around in a school zone where, it must be, especially when it's a young person.
It's really hard because these people, they're so young and it's like they've never had a chance, and they didn't know any better. And as a parent myself, you just see yourself in their shoes, and it's hard to deal with. It's very emotional.
You try to do the best you can, obviously, as their attorney. But again, you're a person, and you're a father.
We're all human. Yeah, we're all human. You know, it hits close to the heart.
Especially if you are the person that did the hit. That's got to be devastating too. I'm sure you've seen a lot of that.
Devastating for everybody.
Yeah.
Different people handle different things, in different ways.
So let's just be safe out there. How about that?
I agree.
And then we'll put Brian out of business, and we're all just too safe.
And Brian can become an analyst for the Toronto Raptors.
Coming out. I love it. Yeah.
Next time we come in, we're going to be in a training camp next time you come in, so I can't wait to get your take on that. Not much Raptors talk this time around, but I think we cleared that air last time you were in. But looking forward to training camp for the Raptors starting up, and then I can tell you I told you so.
Okay.
How about that? Brian Goldfinger, give me the pitch. Where can people find you?
You can visit the website at goldfingerlaw.com or email me at Brian, BRIAN, at goldfingerlaw.com.
Thanks, my friend, for coming in.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.